We are officially back. I've been away for about 3 weeks now. I had a military trip to Alaska, which was a lot of fun. But we are back to reality. And anytime you kind of step away from crypto for a couple of weeks, it feels like a few years has passed. And that is quite honestly a few years worth of time that we've got to catch up on in today's video, because a lot has happened for Bitcoin since we last talked about it. And I think we're headed in a direction that most people are going to attempt to deny that is the direction we're headed. But we're going to talk about what we predicted at the end of last year, how that's already playing out, and what could be next for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, all in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Alex, talk about crypto news, crypto passive income. If you enjoy content like that, consider subscribing. Enjoyed this video, smash up the like. Without further ado, let's end the video. So first, I want to highlight some of the things that I talked about in my video. This is actually on the 31st of December of last year, where we talked about what is headed into 2026 for crypto. And I want to talk about a few things. Mind you, at this time that we're recording this video, Bitcoin was sitting at $88,000. We're going to look at some of the alts that we also talked about and what is happening and how much of that has played out and why I think much of it will continue to play out, and kind of revisit the only bullish thesis for Bitcoin moving forward in 2026. We're going to play this real quick. And a lot of things are going to have to play out to make that a possibility, because otherwise I think a lot of people, there's going to be two people that are going to have the perspective of they're buying Bitcoin, or they're buying commodities at the top. For example, silver peaking, gold peaking. So you're going to have either people that are going to top blast those only to lose money when they do correct. And then they're going to look at Bitcoin and say, hey, it's already at a discount. Maybe I'll put my money in there. So I already talked about this because this was at a time where a lot of your commodities, not just gold and silver, but a lot of your other commodities, platinum, palladium, were continuing higher. And in fact, just within one day, you had a 30% correction in the price of silver. So a lot of people lost money top blasting a lot of these precious metals at the top, right? You never win buying at the top, especially when there's not been a correction in a relatively decent amount of time. Because what we saw with the likes of gold and silver is there was just a constant way up, constant movement up, and there was no correction. There was no time to let things cool off. It was almost like a blow off top when you saw the likes of gold going to like 5,500, 5,600, whatever it topped out at, all the way crashing back down to like 4,900. So this is, not saying that everything you're going to predict is perfect, but a lot of the things that we've started to see has been playing out. And what we've seen is the likes of Cathie Wood talk about this would be a good opportunity to buy Bitcoin instead of commodities, considering how much commodities have increased in value, have crashed, and kind of insinuating the whole pivot that a lot of people have talked about before in the past, pivoting from the gains that they've enjoyed in the likes of commodities, buying commodities, and turning those into a discount opportunity that many would consider in the price of Bitcoin. So I highlight this also in this video. I want to briefly talk about this as well as we continue listening and see it go up. I think there's just a lot of ways to potentially play a green or a bullish year for Bitcoin. But other things have to happen. There's not enough going for Bitcoin on its own, at least in my opinion, for Bitcoin to have an amazing performing year. And I think that's still the case. There's not enough going for Bitcoin. There really is not enough going for Bitcoin. This was at an $88,000 Bitcoin. There's not enough going for Bitcoin at $72,000 right now for it to go to a new all-time high. But I highlighted one specific theory in this video that is the only chance that Bitcoin could recover and go back up to above 100,000, go back to maybe its prior all-time high. And I highlighted this in this video, which, I said it would have to stay above 75,000, maintain above 75,000. And right now, as we're looking at the price of Bitcoin, it is not doing that. And so I think the only bullish theory for anyone that had any any sliver of bullishness left in their body for Bitcoin in 2026, that entire theory is now no longer applicable. And I think that is the epitome, unfortunately, of the current state of Bitcoin. And that one theory, the only possible opportunity, is no longer valid. But I highlight it in this video because Bitcoin didn't stay above a crucial support level, and as I'm recording this video, is already breaking down below it. So play on the factors. We talked about this in a prior video. A lot of factors have to play a role for this to go to all-time highs. And of course, there's not. Hold on. All right, 2026. But here is one theory that I do have that I think could be potentially what's happening. And this only plays out if these levels remain the same. So here's a quick level I want to draw out right here to right here, right? So we're kind of stagnant. We've seen this support here. We've seen sideways here. We've seen resistance support here before. And we have this massive support here at 75,000. So the 75,000 level, if you've been watching Bitcoin for the last couple of days, it has been doing anything and everything possible to stay at this $75,000 level because traders know psychologically, historically, this is one of the most important levels for Bitcoin if a bullish thesis, a bullish market thesis was to ever continue to exist in 2026. I would not be surprised if we go back down to 75,000. We've seen it as much resistance back here, about the fact that and we saw this as support after we corrected after the by the way, it would have been a great short trade announcement, Trump winning, etc. We could see a correction. Now, we could be seeing right now is similar, and I've talked about this before, where we saw this kind of top here, and then we see a correction down. So we've seen a top, we've seen a correction down. This corrected this time to only 80,000. That was kind of the low, which is right here. And we may not go to 75,000. If that's the case, then we are maybe setting ourselves up for this to happen in the likes of 2026, which would put us at $130,000 to $140,000 Bitcoin in June. That is the bullish thesis. If things play out, that could be, but what would have to stay in play is we have to use these level supports that we have already. We can't break down below 75,000. Otherwise, it's a no-go, and Bitcoin's in a definite bear market. So that is essentially exactly what has happened, what has played out. Bitcoin has not maintained above 75,000, and I think that only further validates if there was a 1% portion of your body that thought that we were going to have a Bitcoin rally in 2026, that is essentially gone at this point. There's some other things I highlighted in this video. I'm going to play very briefly, and we're going to get back to what is happening right now. I just kind of wanted to highlight, looking at not everything you're going to say, not everything you're going to look at, but having been in crypto for going on like 8 years now, you kind of get an idea of what a market cycle looks like. Does it happen the same time, the same way every single time? It doesn't. And that's why they say sometimes history doesn't always repeat, but it oftentimes rhymes. It's not going to always happen the exact same way, but there's going to be so many similarities, it's going to be hard to try to disregard the facts. And that is essentially what has happened. Talk about the fact of Solana. Solana is $124. It says Solana is going to go sub 100. Talk about some others. I said Ethereum is going to go down. Play this really briefly, and then we'll go back to what's happening right now. I think the likes of a lot of your alts, when you look at Solana, you look at Ethereum, they're going to go down. Solana is going to go sub 100. Ethereum is going to go sub 2,000. I think a lot of these are going to retrace, especially if Bitcoin enters a true bear market. This is a no-brainer. I don't think Solana is going to go back to $8. It's not going to be at the same type of sentiment that was back then with the whole FTX collapse. So that's pretty much it, right? So, I mean, when you look at things right now, we're going to look at crypto in just a second. We're going to look at where ETH is. I think ETH is right now right at 2,000. So it wouldn't surprise me for that to continue lower. And Solana is already like at $90 or something like that. So, this was almost too easy to kind of predict, seeing how the direction the entire market was already headed. But in many ways, you don't know until you know, right? Forecasting anything is difficult, but to kind of see how things have happened in prior cycles top out in a bull market in Q4 of that year following the halvening cycle. Everything has played out so far to the halvening cycle. We've talked about the halvening cycle multiple times on the channel, and until that is invalidated, the halvening cycle still plays a huge part into individual sentiment. So a couple of things, people talking about the current position of Michael Saylor, the Big Short. So the guy behind the Big Short made $800 million by shorting the stock market. Talking about the fact that Michael Burry is saying, hey, everything is going to crash right now. He does not believe in Bitcoin. He's very, very bearish on it. And you have Michael Saylor on the other end, who has made $13 billion buying Bitcoin. Well, that's not exactly the case right now. His entire portfolio is up right around $4.8 billion. Was at one point up about $22 billion. So, that would have been obviously a fantastic time to cash out. But either way, plenty of money so far as total profits right now for the likes of Strategy. Now, mind you, it's going as the price of Bitcoin, because of how many Bitcoins they have, if the price of Bitcoin continues lower and, for example, drops below 70,000, it gets a little bit more dicey, if you will, for the likes of Strategy and their overall strategy to acquiring Bitcoin at lower prices. So something to consider. But, you do have people out there that are still bullish on the idea that the fact that Bitcoin could rally, and believe that this entire thesis of kind of what we presented and what I talked about in my video in December, that this is a final test before we go back up to new all-time highs. I think the problem is that this kind of is invalidated because the biggest support level of 75,000 is not holding up. And you can kind of see this already. We're already headed to this weekly 200-day exponential moving average, which sits at right now at around $68,000 Bitcoin, which I think would probably be the next level of support, considering that is where the 65 to 70,000 is kind of like where we had an all-time high June of the last bull cycle, peaked out in like November, December of that year as well. That's what we're seeing here, June to November, where we saw these two peaks. We're going to probably find some support there. We also have this massive pocket where we found some resistance in this cycle before we made a new all-time high. So I think there's a good chance that, we're going to come into these levels, if I could draw properly, this right here, and really this entire pocket is going to be some form of support and resistance, just the same way that we've seen this pocket right here act as some level of support and resistance before we've broken down further. So I think, if you're looking at a worst case scenario for the likes of Bitcoin, like I said before, I don't think we see Bitcoin below 50,000 in a very, very world-ending scenario. We're talking about Binance, being insolvent. Like if that was to play out, then obviously I think we could see much lower than 50,000. Or some exchange becoming insolvent, I think we could maybe see even worse off. But I think, between 30 and 50,000, I think the world would have to freeze over for Bitcoin to be below 30,000. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin to drop as low as 50,000 in this cycle. And, I think realistically, the next step is 70,000 and 65 to 70,000 more specifically. And that's kind of also iterated a little bit by the likes of Benjamin Cohen. He's been in crypto for a very long time. Also talking about where the fact of the matter is that Bitcoin is headed to its 200 weekly moving average. And so, I think this is also very realistic. This kind of similar range that we've highlighted here at the 50 to 65,000 range right here in a worst case scenario. I think that's very, very plausible. I think it's very reasonable. I think the next step is going to be testing that moving average on the weekly, the 200 exponential moving average on the weekly chart. Because right now there's really is nothing. There's no support. There really is nothing on the daily. There's nothing on anything really in a shorter time span other than the support level here at 68,000. I think that's kind of where we're headed next. We'll probably test 70,000 first as a psychological level support, but really the next support is going to be here at 68,000. We'll see what happens there. That is the only play, right? So I think that is the whole idea that you have with like the likes of Crypto Rover saying, hey, we're coming down here retesting this. Maybe in a crazy world, we come down here. This is the, I mean, this is, let me get rid of this. This is the support level that he's talking about, right? Maybe we come down here, we test this, and then we bounce off of it. The problem is that would take another, like, I think we're moving too fast on this weekly candle. We're going to go down below even further than what you see on his chart right here. So either way, I think there's further downside, unfortunately, for the likes of crypto. But I think it's not just for the likes of crypto. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening for commodities as well. We talked about commodities in my video. In fact, in my video where I talked about River, a token that was at $18, it went to $88. Then I put a post on X saying that it's going to have a similar price reaction to MYX, which was, I wouldn't say heavily manipulated, but the liquidity was heavily controlled. And so when you have highly controlled liquidity, what you have is it's easier to manipulate the price or really punish people who are trying to short it. So it causes a lot of short squeezing. In fact, for the likes of River, we're not going to get into the weeds of it, but people were paying $70,000 a day in funding fees to try to short River, the crypto project, which caused only higher prices. And so when you kind of see that pattern happening, you can kind of prepare for it and you take advantage of it. And so for those of you who took advantage of River going from $18 to $84 at a time where Bitcoin's dumped like 30%, well, that's hats off to you. But at the same time, I said there's going to be a massive correction in likes of River. River then corrected it down to like $12. It's back to like $24 today. By the way, very, very similar type of predictions that we had for gold and silver. There is a massive collapse. Silver dropped 30%. Talked about this already, saying that there are going to be people who are going to be top blasting it only to get caught buying gold and silver at the tops. Now, here's the thing is, you know, when you look at, I mean, look at this massive, massive correction. Silver was at peaked at $122, goes down to $73. Excuse me, let me see what this massive overall correction is. That is a 41% correction, which is absolutely insane. But compared to Bitcoin, it's actually recovered, right? So from going down here to $70, we're seeing a recovery. It actually broke above 90, came back down. So, I mean, it's absolutely impressive. And I think there's still a lot of momentum for the likes of commodities. And I think that's the unfortunate thing. I'm not surprised. You know, I wish I had done a video talking about the correction in a more short-term stance, but you know, not surprised that the $70 was a level of support. We've seen it tested multiple times. So that would have been a fantastic trade for getting in at 70, seeing it go back up to $92. By the way, I digress. I think overall commodities are still hot. And I think more attention is on commodities. People aren't interested in crypto. People are already seeing the downward trajectory, seeing the downward pressure. There's nothing left to be bullish on right now in this market. And it's only going to be even worse for the likes of people who are bullish on Ethereum. I just feel so bad, especially for those who bought in. You know, some people down. What's his name? Mr. Lee is down an insane amount on Ethereum. Ethereum holding on to 2100. Tom Lee. So Tom Lee down billions of dollars, ranking in one of the worst traders in history. From his buying Ethereum at the top. And so, you know, you're seeing Ethereum dump. You're going to see Solana. We've already talked about this as well. Solana dumping. I mean, you see Solana right now at $90, just an absolute terrible, terrible chart. It's already breaking down the 200-day weekly average. So, you know, nothing looks good for crypto. There's nothing really bullish for crypto. I think the next stop for Solana is probably going to be $75 to $50. I think realistically we could see Solana go down to $50, maybe down to 40. It's just, I mean, just look back at where we were in 2022 and 2023. A lot of people have forgotten what happened 3 years ago with Solana at $8, Bitcoin at 18,000. I mean, just think about it. I mean, a lot of you have entered crypto since the last 1 to 2 years. A lot of us were around where Bitcoin went from 69,000 down to 17.5 or whatever it was. Seeing the likes of Solana go from $300 to $8. It was just absolutely insane. So either way, I think there's a lot left in the bear market. I think there's unfortunately a lot left that's not all too good on the bright side for Bitcoin. But I think once the opportunities present themselves, people forget there's ways to make money on the downtrend as well. There's ways to make money when things correct, when things go down. And I think that's going to be the biggest opportunities that we're going to see in 2026. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you think Bitcoin is headed? Where do you think the commodities are headed? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Enjoy this video. Smash up the like. Enjoy content like this. Consider subscribing. Until next time, guys, stay invested.